All right, welcome everybody to the second talk for this afternoon, iRODS UGM2020. This is Ingrid Barcena from KU Leuven. I almost got that right, I'm sure. She's going to talk about using iRODS to build research data management service in Flanders.
Thank you, Terrell. Thank you for inviting us to come here. I'm Ingrid Barcena. I work at the KU Leuven at the HPC user support, and I'm going to try to tell today, first of all, who are we, what we do, and specifically about the Tier 1 data project. What are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do that? And more importantly, how are we trying to do it? I'm going to go very fast also about the two first pilots that we want to implement, and a little bit about our short-term, medium-term plans for the next month. So first of all, a little bit of disclaimer. So we are just a newcomer here. And I learned yesterday that actually in the iRODS user evolution, you don't evolve to a old wise man, but actually to a superhero. So next time I will fix my slide, but actually we are just starting with iRODS. And I see here in iRODS group, a lot of people that has been already evolving far. We are learning, we are excited about collaborating with everybody and hope that we will learn fast and be soon a little bit more to the right. First of all, so who is the Flemish Supercomputing Center? Is a partnership with all 5 universities in Flanders. We are supported by the Flemish government through the Flemish Research Council, the FWO. And actually, we are not. We are a virtual center. We don't even have a legal entity, but we are distributed in a center dislocated, and people that is paid by the government to work on the VSC, but distributed on the 5 universities. We've been already here for 10 years, and over these 10 years, we have built an HPC infrastructure. We work on a 2-layer infrastructure. We have what we call Tier 2 systems, are the systems located locally at every university that mainly provide services to the local users. And then we have the Tier 1 infrastructure that's located in one of the sites. On this moment is installed in Leuven. And then we provide services to all the research community in Flanders. We are also member of PRAISE and Euro HPC. Actually, we are member of the Finnish consortium that will install one of the pre-exascale systems in Europe in the beginning of next year. So our users, so that was live for 10 years. We were running an HPC system, I think, quite successful, but over the years, we were hearing more and more users coming to us and saying, there is things I need, and I cannot do it in the HPC system. So all these things that were not fitting on these monolithical, typical, classical HPC clusters. Things like, I want to use another operating system, I need a workflow manager, a portal, anything about containers, Kubernetes. Also on the other side, we were having more and more requests for storage capacity, but also not only capacity, but also with all the open science movements about collaboration, sharing data, data management features, etc. So in 2018, we got 30 million from the Flemish government to extend and to develop our Tier 1 system in what we call supercomputing as a service. And that's basically, we are adding 2 new services together with the compute, a data platform and a cloud services that actually will provide us the opportunity to offer more flexibility to our users in the cloud infrastructure and the data, basically storage capacity, but also very important data management features. So what's exactly all these Tier 1 data services that we are trying to build? That we like to call research data repository with data management features. That's very important. It's based in iRODS. And we are trying there to add the added value that we see in comparison with a typical storage box is to be able to apply best practices, automation of workflows, and also be sure that you apply some standards. So important to say is, how do we fit here in the data lifecycle? We are not a research data, a repository that pretends to tackle all the life cycle of the data, but only active data. So we only want, the idea is to offer these services for the users that are using the HPC infrastructure. So while they are using the HPC infrastructure, while this data is active, they will have access to this service. This service is tightly connected with the compute, with the cloud, and then all the users have this, all this integrated infrastructure. So that means that our platform, it's not intended to have any inactive data, post-publication data, so we will not be implementing capabilities of publication or preservation, not for this repository. There are other projects, for instance, at the University of Leuven, of doing a real research data management repository with all also these capabilities, and iRODS is also one of the options that we are considering. So also, we don't want to be an island. We know we are here in the middle of a very large and diverse research data management landscape. So we have to ensure that our platform can communicate and send data when the project is finished. All the inactive data has to go to other repositories that exist in this landscape. So what was our challenge? That's our tier one infrastructure is not very large, but what we have, not maybe a large amount of users, but a very diverse amount of users. So we have users of many different domains using very different things. And on top of that, we will be adding a new tier one infrastructure that will be located in Ghent. So soon, in few months, we will be handling or having to work with 2 HPC systems located in 2 different data centers. So our biggest challenge here is diversity. So we have a lot of different scientific domains, data types, data sizes, and workflows. So if you were listening yesterday, you should know by now that data platforms that work for every use case exist only in marketing brochures. This is not a marketing brochure, so we could stop now. This is impossible. We don't do our project, but still, we think we still can try. And we have a strategy for that. And the strategy is divide and conquer. So we have a very large user base. What we are going to do is pick up some of the groups and users that we consider that are relevant, and we will work together with them very closely to identify their workflows and try to bring these workflows to the data platform. So the idea is that there also the user will be aware about the platform, and we can ensure also that at the end of the process of implementing the platform, users are using it. That is also very important. So what we expect that thanks to that, to work with different scientific domains, with different types of data sets, we can then build a base of general use features that will be more or less usable for everyone, but also we will be building a very specific domain features and tools that they can use for the community on this science domain will be using. So basically, the key here will be how do we choose these pilots to ensure that we have a good starting point and that we can build the platform with as much as possible of the general usage. So we will try always to work on select projects or pilots where there is a collaboration factor. So several different research groups of different universities working on similar things or collaborating, working together. All these groups often share the same data sets or use the same kind of data sets. So the idea of consolidating those data sets in one place instead of having those data sets copied 4 or 5 times in different data centers. They also share often workflows. So once we develop a workflow for this small amount of group, all people from this community could use eventually those workshops with minimal extra configuration. And at the last, we also want to be sure that by using the platform, the community, the groups, the research groups gets a benefit. So there is an added value of using the data platform and not using it. So they will be doing the science more efficiently, and they will have better results and a little bit more better outcome. That's basically the idea. So we are starting all these pilots with the goal of try to test the configuration and the capabilities of iRODS in a real environment, not in a test environment, gain experience on the development of iRODS rules, also for real use cases, implement and experiment the data management procedures. This is especially the part that we want to be sure that we can focus and be sure we help the users on that. And also test the interoperability of our platform with other repositories that will be there available. Where are we at the moment? So basically, on this moment, we started in September. We installed first iRODS infrastructure, so the software. In October, we became memberships of the iRODS consortium. Then in December, we bought some storage for the pilot, about 3 petabytes. It's 2 times 1.5 petabyte. That give us a little bit of a path to be sure that we can include pilots and we still have some storage capacity. Then COVID-19 appeared in our lives, and some side effects happened, like some delay on the storage delivery of the storage, and also some of our teams were at some moment completely focused on moving a university from on-site teaching to online teaching. So some things has been a little bit slower than we were expecting. But basically from April, May, we are back on business, and we are now have an infrastructure that's working. We have been testing it. We have been doing minimal configuration. Some of the capabilities are already, we've been testing and playing with it. And especially we've been building documentation for the users. So we are now ready. In the next weeks, we will start working with the users. So we will tell the users, we will do a session with them to show how the platform works and let them to use it and see then what there comes. And the next step will be to add a second pilot before the summer that will be related with social science and art. So what exactly the configuration we've built on this moment is quite simple, I would say. It's not very complex. We have only one zone. That's something also we want to test. Is one zone enough? We will maybe need to add more zones in the future as we add more users. But basically, we have the ICAD database in a MySQL cluster, 2 iRODS servers configured in high availability, 2 POSIX storage resources that are replica one from each other in 2 separate data centers, and also a Ceph storage resource. On the client level, we expect the users from the HPC from tier 1 and tier 2 to use basically iCommands and the Python client. Eventually, Globus Online is a tool that the users are using to transfer data from and to the HPC. So we would like to see how we can integrate this with iRODS. And from a laptop or from desktops, we expect the users to have mainly used the Yoda portal that has been developed by Utrecht University. We installed it just last week, and we will start now configuring and understanding how it works. We also are working with iRODS, so expect users to use WinSCP or CyberDeck. Also Globus Online, we should here see if this is an option, and maybe some users working from Linux clients could install the iCommands. So basically here, we are already experimenting with the audit rule engine, still trying to understand how it works. We have been also doing some tests with NFS RODS with the old version. So we'll try the new version that was announced last week, because we had some problems with the previous one. And also we'll try to play with the storage tiering, moving data from the POSIX to the Ceph. For the moment, will be just a 3rd copy, but that's just to try to understand how things works, maybe for us as a future architecture. A little bit about the pilot. So the first pilot project that we are going to try to bring to the platform is 5 groups that from 3 different universities on the consortium that works with climate change studies. They use very similar data sets and also workflows, not always the same, but similar. So the idea is that's a little bit the workflow is not very complex, but they basically has data that they collect from different data sources that are public, CEMIPS, Cordex, LUMIP, etc. This data will be ingested in a landing zone. Then some metadata will be extracted. They use mostly netcdf files, and probably add some extra metadata, calculate checksums, do some quality control, and then bring the data, register in iRODS in 2 copies in the 2 data centers. Users should be then interacting through Yoda and then be able there to manage the data, share the data, and discover data. So here we see automatic ingest and landing zone as a capability that we'd like to try. Also netcdf microservices, metadata templates, also something we want to try. In the compute side, then a user will be want to do a simulation, will be need some data that is in the data platform for performing this simulation. So he will submit a job to the cluster, and from the compute nodes, either with iCommands, with Python client, or some tools we are building on top of the Python client, for instance, for doing bulk transfers. And we also plan to integrate this with the MOAP staging, stage out functionalities. The user will ask the data that is needed for the simulation, and then some simulation will be done. And after that, the data, the outputs will be back to the data platform, again, adding the necessary metadata, netcdf, and especially also information about the job ID, in which machine was done, and for instance, in which software version of the software, etc., etc. So users eventually can say, okay, we know that was a bug on this software, give me all the outputs that were created using that software, and I can probably reproduce these simulations. So that's a little bit the functionalities and the workflow they have. That's the climate change. And the social science, that is the second pilot that we plan to introduce, is a group, also a collaboration between different research groups at the different universities in Flanders. And they are actually a international research infrastructure that's called CLARIA Flanders. And they are a subset of the CLARIA European community. Again, the workflow is very similar. They have data that they ingest and then they use for submitting jobs. In this case, they will have an extra service. They also want to use the cloud service here to build some portals or having some Jupyter notebooks to analyze data that will be in the data platform and pre-process, doing some machine learning and analytics, adding, for instance, geotag information to old digitalized maps, etc., etc. So that's they also want to ensure that this data later on can be published for preservation on institutional repositories or international social science repositories. So we'll be also experimenting with them how that can be done. So here again, we have very similar, the same capabilities, or almost there's the things that we will probably hear. Metadata, of course, will be different than in the previous case. Where we want to go from here. So we are ready to open, opening the doors for our users. So we will start now with the climate change studies group, then the social science, but we expect to have also life science groups, astrophysics, etc. We would like to have 4 or 5. It will depend also a little bit the complexity of every project, how far we can get. The more we get, the better. For instance, for life science, we have already groups that are using the cloud infrastructure to host the galaxy.be portal. So that's maybe something we need to explore. We would like to have some trainings. That's something we initially planned in December for April, March, April, but Corona strike there, and so we will now probably be ready to do it online, because on site won't be possible. We have to start planning the buying of the final storage infrastructure for the project for the next 3 years. We have there a budget of about 3 million, and we expect to have a kind of 2 times 10 petabytes replicated, but that's something still as we move forward with the pilots, we'll see which things are necessary, which things works, which things not, and we will probably define a little bit better what's the underlying storage infrastructure that we need. At the end of December, we want to evaluate the pilots and see what we learn, what is working, which use cases doesn't work, and then of course these use cases, they don't have to use the data platform. And also important, I think yesterday also was mentioned, there is always money for implementing the projects, but not always money to sustain and operate the system. So we want to be sure that we have in place an exploitation model that we have to discuss with our funding agency how we can make this sustainable over the time. So, and after that, when we evaluate and adjust the configuration, then we will plan at the end of the year what's the next movement. Are we going to go to production at the beginning of next year, or maybe we have to keep doing some extra piloting because we need more information? That's things that we will know in the next month. Finally, I don't like to finish without thanking the team that is behind all this, the people that's working hard to build this infrastructure. We have people from different departments, from the storage experts, people on the Linux teams that takes care of the iRODS middleware, and also the user support part that is really, we are the ones that we're going to be talking with the users, sitting with them, understanding their needs, and implementing the rules and the policies, and especially documentation and training. We have in total, we expect a total effort of 4 full-time equivalents, and we are now going to hire at least 2 more people that will also be involved in one way or another, full-time or part-time, to the project. So that's all I have to explain. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. That's a lot in a second language. That's amazing. I'm very impressed. We do have a question about the EUDAT B2 stage layer, right? So Mohammed Hayek says, was the EUDAT B2 stage considered for data movement to and from different organizations? Because it's basically grid FTP on top of iRODS.
Yeah, we are not yet there. We are following EUDAT as a project. We know they use iRODS, and I think we have to study well exactly what are they doing, and probably adopt or use some of the tools that they are. But we want first to have something running, and then start adding extra things. Let's say this way. But we are following it. Yeah.
Excellent. And I know you mentioned Globus in the conversation. I know there's an ongoing discussion. I don't know if there's anything to add about that right now. I know there might be a lightning talk or something on Thursday. We'll see if that comes together.
Okay, excellent.
Let's see if there's anything else over here. So you talked about federation a little bit and wondering if everybody's just using iCommands, and I think you did answer that once you got to your architecture diagrams and how people are doing, moving things around. Also, it's very new, so there's not that many people yet.
No, there's nobody for the moment. So that's, but of course this federation is for sure something that if we develop later on a repository also for KU Leuven, for the university, that will be probably more important. So we want for sure to experiment with federation in the next month. Yeah. But at this moment we don't have users.
Right. So everything's easy when there's no user. Good.
Yeah, that's it. It's successful.
Are there any other questions from the group? We've got a couple minutes, either audible questions or in the chat. We have one more thumbs up for being interested in a tie-in with Globus. So yes, there's a lot of interest. We'll figure out how we can do that soon, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. It's wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you.